Hey, welcome to the coach's
Sorry,
office. No, it's fine.
I'll cut it out. Maybe I'll cut that part out.
All right, welcome to the coach's office. Today we're going to continue our talk about our mission of being uncommon every day. First, I wanted to talk about real quick. Me and Coach Smith went to a recruiting night on Monday. Got to talk to a handful of really good schools. Some of those, Northwest Missouri State, Missouri Western.
Lindenwood.
Lindenwood was there. Westminster.
Augustine.
Washburn.
Washburn was there. So a handful of good schools. I think there was 12 or 13 total schools there. We talked to Missouri Western, and then their coach came in the next day to actually talk to some players and see them and stuff. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
So we did that this past Monday. It was an event held at DeSmet, and me and Coach Smith went, and it was really good.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking. This is take 2 for trust, because the first one was not good.
No. Not our best.
I know in a previous podcast I said we don't edit this, but we edited that one for sure. And we're gonna just talk about trust today. So our first 2 core values were attitude and effort, and those went on the pinky fingers. The next 2 are trust and sacrifice, and those go on the ring fingers. And today we're just going to talk about trust, and then our next episode we'll talk about sacrifice. So kind of going to cover 3 things about trust. We're going to define it, how to get it, why it's important, what it looks like, kind of all of those things. So kind of my definition of trust is having faith in someone else to do their job, having faith in someone else to care about kind of the same thing, and a couple other things that go along with trust are being reliable, being truthful, all those things go into trust. And I know trust is kind of an easy thing. Most people, if you say, oh, you got to have trust, everyone kind of knows what that means. But I think having a specific definition helps kids kind of understand what we're looking for with that. And along with kind of that definition of trust, within anything, but on a football team, the different places we have to have that are player to player. We'll talk about what that looks like a little bit later. Player to coach, coach to player, and coach to coach. And really, I mean, if you think about anything that you're a part of, if you don't have faith in someone else to do what they've promised to do, or if there's no trust there, it'll all fall apart. Whether that's your marriage, a business you're doing, you're running, no matter what it is. If you don't have that trust there, it's just going to be destroyed. So now let's move on to kind of how to get that trust. So one of the things I think is really important is when we're talking about this is so many people think that because of their title or because of just putting general time in that they should be trusted. And someone should believe that they're going to do what they're supposed to do just because, they're a senior in high school or they've been coaching for so many years, for 15 years. That would be like me, okay, this is my 15th year coaching. Players should trust me just because of that. Well, it doesn't really work that way. Everyone has to earn the trust that's given to them. And it's not just putting in time, it's putting in, I think, in my opinion, quality time. And it kind of goes back to those first 2 core values we had where we talked about effort, having effort and great attitude. If you're spending time with someone and they aren't giving forth their best effort every day, if they have a horrible attitude, it's going to be hard to have faith in that person to do what they say they're going to do, or to do their job to the level that you need them to do their job. So it's kind of works out perfectly how those 2 things factor into this core value so well. And kind of looking at how this applies to our team a little bit. I think, always working to improve, doing what's best for the team. Those are all ways of how players, how coaches, because we're not just talking about players here either. We're talking about coaches earning the trust of the players and players earning trust of the coaches. Always working to improve, get better, caring about the team, caring about our goals as a team, what we're trying to accomplish, and just doing whatever it is you can do to make us better as a group. And really, it comes down to showing that you care. If you're just a shell of a human and you're there, I mean, that's true. If you're just a shell of a human and you're just around, that's not really how you build faith, and that's not how you're going to get someone to have faith in them.
Ryan, what's the top? What would you say your top 3 things that kids need to do if they are looking to earn your trust? So
show up,
yeah.
Be there, work hard, and ask questions, or try to help out their teammates. I would say that might be even
help out their teammates.
It depends where they're at. Like if it's a senior, then it might be try to help other teammates. But if it's a freshman, it's probably asking questions.
Yeah, that's good.
Really,
Or maybe just be coachable. Like
Yeah.
If you're corrected, right, and you don't make that correction, right, that says something. If you make that correction, that's phenomenal. Like that's awesome to see as a coach, is to correct a kid on something and then watch him do it correctly is awesome.
Well, and that's part of the reciprocal nature of that relationship is, as a coach, I have to trust that my players are going to listen to me and that they're going to trust me. And then by doing so, they are earning my trust back, right? So they have to trust us that we know what we're talking about and that we have their best interest in mind, and that when we say, hey, do it this way instead of that way, they might not always understand why, but they need to trust that there is a reason, and that if they're faithful, then eventually they will understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that goes back to you have to be able to correct your mistakes also. If you mess up, you have to be like, oh,
as
hey
a
guys,
coach,
I messed,
as a coach, yeah.
Hey, a drill, if you mess up a drill, the next day you'll be like, hey guys, I completely messed that up. We need to do it this way. This is going to look way better. You just have to be able to own up to that,
Which is interesting because
so that's one way for the coach to go trust back to for the coach to earn the trust of the player. What's a few more ways that we?
Well, just to elaborate on that.
My bad.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to say that I think, as an adult, as a teacher, as a coach, someone in authority, it's easy to think that people will trust you because you know everything or because you're an expert. But that's not really the case. I think more often than not, that's off-putting or intimidating. Mm-hmm. I think what really earns people's trust is when they can connect to you and relate to you. And so if I made a mistake and I come back the next day, it's tempting to think, oh God, they're not going to trust me now because they're going to see that I don't know what I'm talking about. But the reality is, no, it's actually going to help them trust you more because
100%.
Because they're going to be like, oh, he's a human being. He's humble enough to acknowledge that he made a mistake. And I think that that's something that I've learned the more time I've spent in the classroom or on the field.
Is a big,
is being able to admit when you don't know, and being able to connect to your student or your player in that place, because then they can be like, oh, well, this is part of that process. I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be coachable, and I have to have a growth mindset.
Right.
Well, I think one of the things that goes a long way with getting players to trust us as coaches is holding ourselves to the same standard.
Yeah.
I think so many times, just in general, adults have a different standard for themselves as they do either the kids they're working with or whatever it may be. And I think you see it a lot of times in coaching where the coach has, oh, this is how I get to conduct myself, but you have to conduct yourself this way. And really, when we show that, no, we have the same expectations for ourselves as we do you, like this morning, Coach Parks and Coach Nowling got to push the mop head. And now they were here before we started, but we've told the players a couple different times that doesn't really matter. It's if you're not in the gym with us when we start at 6, that's, you have to push this mop head down and back.
It sucks.
And
It's not fun at all.
I can say that from experience.
And the players were giving them a hard time because they weren't in there right when we started. And I think us doing that goes a long way with them going, okay, they're not going to have us do anything that they're not willing to do themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be one of the biggest things that we can do as a coaching staff to gain their trust and for them to know that we have their best interest at heart always. So, and I think it just boils down to, that right there shows that we care enough about them to, that we're not going to have them do something that we as well won't do. So, all right. So now let's talk about why trust is so important. And we kind of talked about this at the beginning of the podcast about, anything that you want to make great, whether that's our football program, your marriage, or whatever it is. If that trust isn't there, if that faith in whoever it is you're working with, whether your spouse or whoever, it's just going to fall apart. And a couple of different examples as far as football's concerned. So I'll use an example for offensive line. That's what I coach, and you can really see it in any position. But say on the offensive line, we have an inside zone play called. Well, an inside zone, every offensive lineman is in charge of the gap to their play side, more or less. And if I'm the right guard, or say I'm the center, and I don't trust that the right guard is going to hold his gap like he's supposed to, well, now that center is going to try and not only do his job, but the right guard's job. And we see it every year. We see it probably almost every game where and the players don't really understand that that's a lack of trust when we point it out, and then we point it out to them. But what ends up happening is that one guy tries to do both jobs, and then neither one gets done very well. And a lot of times with the offensive line, that means someone comes free. Usually the center is supposed to block comes free, and the guard was supposed to block comes free. And that would usually result in a sack or a loss of yards, which is never good. Same with like double teams. If we're double teaming two offensive linemen are working together to double team a defensive lineman and then working to a linebacker, if we'll just go back with our center and our guard, if that center doesn't trust that guard's going to come off, well, they're both going to come off. That D lineman to go to that linebacker, now the D lineman's free, which is worse than the linebacker being free. So, it's just so important in every aspect of the game. A defensive example would be, this is also, we see this quite a bit as well. Linebackers, say there's a run play. The play side linebacker scrapes outside. The backside linebacker looks for a cutback lane, something simple like that. That backside linebacker doesn't trust that the play side linebacker is going to get where he needs to go, so he's screaming outside. Well, now he's leaving a huge gaping cutback lane for that running back to find. And usually on Friday night, those players are going to find those open areas. They're going to find those mistakes. And on defense, when players don't do their job and they try and do everyone else's job, that usually results in a touchdown or a huge gain.
I feel like more times than not, when we see two guys kind of filling the same gap or the same run fit, it's because one guy didn't trust the other. Like that usually ends up being the case.
And it's interesting that, we praise effort. Effort is really important in football. But there are times where guys try to do too much. And I don't know. It's interesting to me that that's almost the more fatal mistake is when you're trying to do two people's jobs, you really don't do anybody's job, and you get in the way of somebody else trying to do their job. And so we want effort, but there are times where it's like, well, we don't need you to be Superman. We need you to play
effort has to
guard.
be applied in the right circumstances.
Yeah.
That's right.
For it to be effective.
It's almost like effort. The definition of effort just needs to be to do your job.
Yes.
To the fullest of your capabilities.
Do your job and only your job to the fullest of your capabilities. Sometimes we misinterpret effort is I need to run as fast as I can to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not your job. Most of the time, that's not your job. But there's also a coaching example here. From a head coaching perspective, I have to have faith in assistant coaches on our staff to not only be masters, if you will, and there's really no such thing as a master at anything. You got to constantly be learning. But I guess faith in that the assistant coaches will put forth their best effort into knowing their position, researching their position, finding new ways to implement our schemes with their position. There's 10 different positions, offense and defense, on a football field. And if I didn't trust my coaches to run those positions, we wouldn't be able to do anything. There's no way one person could coach all positions. Same on game day. We rely heavily on feedback we give each other. Because again, there's a lot. There's 22 bodies out there. There's a lot going on. It's impossible to see everything. And if I don't trust the information that assistant coaches are giving, and vice versa, if an assistant coach is calling plays and they don't trust the information I'm giving them, then we're just going to keep calling the same exact thing with the same exact result. So we have to trust what the other person is seeing on Friday night, which is extremely, extremely important.
Can I mention another example I thought of specifically for a player? You have to trust your technique. And I think about playing safety, for example. It's easy to get lost in the moment on a Friday night and to get excited and to want to run up and make the tackle or whatever the task is.
Freelance a little bit. Yeah.
But what happens is if you get out of your technique, you make big mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. You open yourself up to that. And so if we have a player who isn't trusting his technique, why isn't he trusting his technique? Well, maybe he didn't ever really buy into technique in the first place. Or maybe he knows better than anybody that he hasn't really prepared correctly. He hasn't worked on his technique. Same thing, coaching corners. You got to trust your eyes. You have to trust your read. You have to trust that when you read run and you run upfield that it's going to be correct. Because if you're second guessing yourself the entire time, it slows you down. And so to me, it's not just about having trust. It's about earning trust with yourself. It's about putting the time in, putting the work in, and being prepared for the situation. Mm-hmm. And obviously preparation is really important for coaching as well. You have to trust that you've watched enough film. You have to trust that you're going to be able to make the adjustments because you have put in the preparation in advance and that you're going to have the football knowledge to be able to navigate whatever challenges you encounter, and so there's a preparation component that I think is really important too when it comes to actually performing under pressure, whether you're a coach or a player.
It might be the biggest part of this whole thing is, you only have faith in the people that are putting in that time to prepare. And the players know who that is, the coaches know who that is, everyone knows who's putting in the time to be prepared, But, all right, so that's trust. Our next episode will be on sacrifice. If you have any questions about anything we said during this episode, you can submit those questions to the Coach's Office Podcast at gmail.com. This is the Coach's Office. Thank you for listening.